Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Plan and Zone Commission meeting of today, Tuesday, September 5th. To my left is our I apologize, Commissioner Manus. To my right is the Secretary, Commissioner Tallman. Everybody in the audience will have an opportunity to speak. We've got one public hearing tonight and 3 pieces of business on our regular meeting. We'll start off with the public hearing. Roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hepner.
Here.
Eichelberry.
Here.
Reinhardt. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Tallman here. Ingram.
Present.
Manus.
Here.
Garrington.
Here.
Stelk. Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. First and only item of business is the hearing is case REZ 23-04 is a request of Jason Cousineau to rezone approximately 1.19 acres of land generally located southeast of the Grand Avenue and East 46th Street intersection at 801 East 46th Street from RMF, Multifamily Residential District, to I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District, and it's located in the 7th Ward. Scott?
Yes, we're going to do both the presentation for both the...
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's the other one. So this first slide shows the general vicinity. The subject property is in the blue rectangular there. This next slide shows the zoning, which is industrial, multiple family to the west and east, and to the south is open space zoning. And future land use is consistent with what's there as far as zoning. There's industrial to the north and residential general to the west, and where the subject property is, and a little bit to the southwest. So current zoning is RMF, multiple family residential. This district is intended to accommodate a high-density neighborhood environment characterized by a mixture of housing types, including single-family dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, two-family dwellings, townhouses, and multiple family dwellings. Limited non-residential uses that are compatible with surrounding residential neighborhoods may be permitted in an RMF district. Proposed zoning. It's going to be zoned I-1 light industrial should it be granted. This is intended to provide for a variety of light manufacturing, fabricating, processing, distributing, and warehousing uses. Light industrial uses are enclosed, low-intensity uses with minimal, if any, outside impacts. This shows the site plan concept, which would be 2 parallel buildings to the road, which is 46th Street at the top. There's going to be 2 actually it's going to be a one-way entrance and a one-way exit, and it'll be gated, and the applicant can go into more detail with that. This just shows the concept plan from more of a bird's eye view. 46th Street's kind of on the left, and so that my understanding is that people would enter along the west property line, drive between the 2 buildings, and then exit on the east side of the buildings to 46th Street. Notices were sent on August 23rd to property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. We have not had anything back in writing. I did speak to one person on the phone. They just had some questions, but no necessarily concerns or anything. And the public notice was also published in the Quad City Times August 26th. Our recommendation is, of course, to hold a public hearing. At this time, there's no recommendation until we have the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Commissioners, any thoughts or questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Hepner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, what's next door to the west?
There is a credit union. It's Marine Credit Union is the name,
That's
I
on
believe.
C1 currently?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hepner. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's
Yeah.
CT, I
Staff, just quick, would this have to go in front of the Comprehensive Plan Committee due to the change in the Comprehensive Plan land use plan?
So in conversations with the legal department, it's not absolutely necessary due to its proximity. That would be a choice to present either through the commission or the council if they wish it necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Commissioner Manus.
Thank you. I am wondering if these buildings are going to have, are they going to be climate controlled? Are they going to have water and sewer installed in them or not?
So the property owner is here, or the petitioner is here to help answer some of those questions. Specifically, when we're looking at the zoning district, there is enough sewer capacity on 46th Street to handle any kind of sewer connections if they were to be made. But the petitioner can definitely answer what his vision is for those specific buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Manus. Commissioner Hefner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other question on, is this part of the due diligence to change the zoning? Do you know if the applicant owns the property currently?
He does not currently own it. He has authorization to act as the applicant, though.
Understand, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. Any final questions for staff before I open it up to the petitioner? Seeing none, would the petitioner like to step forward and explain your application?
Love to. My first time doing this, so
Please.
I'll say the right thing, give me some grace.
Please give me your name and address and then describe your project.
Yeah, it's Jason Cousineau. It's 1003 East 7th Street in Coal Valley, Illinois. So I had a real estate agent who brought me this property, and she had a rendering and design done for storage on the property. Well, during my due diligence, I found out that it was zoned residential multifamily. And so my partners and I, we are looking to develop and build garage suites, garage condos, contractor flex space, all the same kind of terminology, I guess. And I think one of the strongest reasons that I think it adds a lot of value to the city, I myself, I used to own a commercial painting business, K&J Finishing. Maybe some of you guys have heard of it, maybe not. But we used to have our shop out in Milan, Illinois, and we had 12 painters at one time, and 4 vehicles going back and forth between Milan, back out to Iowa, and all over on the Illinois side. A lot of wasted driving time, a lot of dollars, wear and tear on vehicles. And so I know that this model is pretty popular out in like Eldridge and West Davenport. I know there's some units like this, and even out in East Moline, there's some as well. I believe there's some in that corridor as well. And so offering more of a centrally located garage, condo, contractor flex warehouse space for contractors in town is going to add a lot of value to them, a lot of less driving time for them, for their shop space and office space, and for other people as well. So that was a big piece of it. I know some of the questions that came up with Scott and Laura were fear of a retail center going in there. We plan to gate both of the entries, and so all of our tenants will have essentially like a garage door opener that will swing the gate open, and so it won't be possible for retail to happen there in and out all day long. Additionally, all of the units will be plumbed individually. They all will be climate controlled as well. We're going for more of a high-end feel, if that makes sense. And maybe another concern the city may have would be folks using it as a self-storage facility. While our pricing will be effective and efficient for a contractor looking for space, or for someone looking for a use like this, will be priced out of the self-storage market. I own self-storage over in Moline, and just to give you an example, a 10 by 10 unit will rent for, $60 to $70 a month, or 60 to 70 cents a square foot. And we'll be looking more for 90 to $1 a square foot for the spaces that we're building here. And so folks aren't going to be using this to kind of store everything in one place, because it'll just be priced out of that market, if that makes sense. It'll make a lot more sense for them to use a self-storage facility versus putting all of their furniture and stuff like that in a facility like this when we're building it.
Point of clarification, you use the term condo. So is this an owner occupied situation or just rental space? To me, a condo, you're buying into the facility.
It's just terminology that we've been using amongst ourselves to call it, like, we might call it a suite. We probably won't call it a condo because we're not giving ownership.
I would
We're-
advise against that, because
Yeah.
generally a condo, you have ownership in that portion of the building, so.
So every
I
time
just wanted to
say
clarify,
condo,
it's
we'll-
monthly rental space is what you're doing.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
We won't be condoing them out so they can sell them individually. Now, there was a concept that I saw in Waukee that really got my wheels turning with this idea, and they are selling them individually. And I showed them
Well,
to
there's
Laura
one in
and Scott.
Northwest Davenport that was done several years ago, and I don't know if it ever filled out.
Yeah, so we're not selling them individually though. We will be renting them out individually.
You can continue on.
I think that's all the information that I wanted to communicate, I guess. All the units, we plan to have about 22 to 24. We're still working with my architect and the designer on some of the clearances that will be needed, the radius for the fire marshal to get trucks in and out in the event of a fire. I've had a couple really good meetings with the city, and building inspector was there as well. He wants to make sure that there's a 1 hour rating between the walls, and every 2 units there's a draft stop. The units will be approximately 50 by 18, and we'll have a 14 by 14 overhead garage door, and then a man door entry as well. And then each unit will be individually plumbed, so there's a bathroom in there, a shop sink that folks can use as well.
That was my other question as far as fire apparatus. What's the spacing between the two buildings? Do you know?
40, I believe the city requested at least 45 feet, but we're up to 48 feet now because we reduced the width of one of the buildings by 5 feet.
Good.
And that was covered with, I think it was Jim, the fire marshal, if memory serves me right. Yes. Yeah,
Jim
we
Morris.
discussed that, yeah.
Sure. Commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Reinhardt?
Thank you. Question I have is, will people be permitted to, let's say, for instance, a guy has antique cars that he wants to store there.
Yes.
Will he be able to work on those cars? In other words, running grinders, paint, all that stuff? Or is it designed strictly to be a storage area?
More storage for like someone who has a high-end car, an RV or a boat is welcome to park it there. But we do not want to be renting to someone who's working on cars actively or operating a car business.
Operating a business,
Yeah.
or even his own
It's just-
business?
Yeah, it's just, it's too much wear and tear and it's messy for everybody. So we don't want that there.
Thank you. I was just worried because of the close proximity to the cemetery.
Thank you.
Any additional questions to the petitioner? Commissioner Garrington?
Yeah, tell us about how you plan on landscaping around it to keep, there obviously the cemetery is there and you are not going to want to see the back of a building or at least something along, and the sides, the straight sides, what did you have in mind on that?
I don't think we've gotten quite there yet. I mean, I'm happy to do what we need to as far as making the city happy with the design we have there. I do know that there's some hedging along the back or the south side right now existing that kind of acts as a barrier between the cemetery and our parcel there. I do know that the property slopes from west to east, and we have to add a water detention center on the east end of the property. But we're still, I guess it's still too early. We haven't fully laid out exactly what we're going to do there, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garrington. Anybody else? Final, Commissioner Manus.
What materials will these buildings be constructed of? Do you know that yet?
Yes, there'll be metal fab construction.
Thank you, Commissioner Manus. Final call for questions before I open it up to the audience. Seeing none, thank you. You can sit
Okay,
down.
we're good? Okay, thank you guys.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak either in favor of or in opposition to this petition? Final call? Commissioners, any final questions? Seeing none, we will close REZ 23-04, and that will end our public hearing. We'll move on to our regular meeting agenda. Roll call, please, Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hepner.
Here.
Eichelberry.
Here.
Reinhardt.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Tallman here. Ingram.
Present.
Manus.
Here.
Garrington.
Here,
And Schneider.
Present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Report of city council activity. Laura?
Thank you. So Johnson School Homes was approved last week. That is final plat F23-08. And then preliminary plat 23-02, which is Splendor Estates, has been tabled to the October 18th Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you, Laura. Secretary's report.
Move the report.
Report's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It will remain as printed. Anything with the comp plan, Laura?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Zoning activity, we have one item. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One case this
Mr.
evening.
Hefner.
Case REZ 23-03, request of 53rd Luxury LLC on behalf of Ed Spear Construction, Inc. and Sheila M. Spear Living Trust to rezone approximately 16 acres of land generally located southeast of 53rd Street and Spring Street, Spear Commercial Park First and Second Edition, from C2 Corridor Commercial District and RMF Multifamily Residential District to C3 General Commercial District. Staff recommends case REZ 23-03 be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the listed findings and conditions, and I so move.
Second.
Case REZ 23-03 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Laura?
Were we going to read the other one too?
Oh, yes, we're going to do both these since they dovetail together. I meant to say that. We'll move on. Unfortunately, I've got a different commissioner reading it, so.
We can let him do it if he wants.
Do you want to go ahead and just read that too, Commissioner Hefner? The REZ 23-04,
There's no conditions, it's just a.
or ROW.
It's one condition. There's just one condition on it.
So,
I mean, I can do it if you want.
yeah, I don't have.
Go ahead. We'll let Commissioner Reinhardt read it since he's ready.
That'll be more fun, I think.
Thank you.
Makes more sense, I guess. What we have here is case ROW 23-04, request of 53rd Luxury LLC to vacate the improved Spring Street right-of-way located south of East 53rd Street. And I so move. There are no conditions.
Case ROW 23-04 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Now, Laura,
Just so you know, there is one.
there is
condition.
one condition though.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, so first up, the rezoning area is highlighted here in yellow. It is both C2 and RMF, directly east of the luxury dealership that's already been developed. From the future land use map, we have corridor commercial district along 53rd Street in a pretty much straight line from north of Stonegate, and the remaining piece of the land is residential general. So the zoning districts that are currently in place, C2 is a district intended to address the commercial corridor, primarily oriented towards a mix of retail, personal service, and office uses along arterial streets and collector streets. C2 district accommodates auto-oriented development, both individual businesses and retail centers, and mixed-use development with the intent of improving the pedestrian environment along Davenport's commercial corridors. RMF as well, we've already kind of gone over what that one is, so I'm just going to skip it. The proposed zoning district is C-3 General Commercial District. This district is intended to accommodate higher intensity commercial development within the city of Davenport that serves both local and regional markets. The C3 district addresses medium and large scale development that may generate considerable traffic and typically require significant off-street parking. Higher density residential uses are also allowed to facilitate a mixed use orientation where appropriate. So the purpose of the rezoning is to facilitate the development of additional vehicle dealerships along 53rd Street. The petitioner has provided a concept plan along with this rezoning district, which you see before you on the slide. Specifically, a dealership within the zoning district does require a special use permit. So the zoning board of adjustment would be reviewing the special use should the rezoning be approved. These were images that were shown at the public hearing by the petitioner last month. So you have Lexus, Kia, and Hyundai. All right, so for the Spring Street right-of-way, the area to be petitioned to be vacated is highlighted in red. As a reminder, it is a two-step process. So the first step is to determine if the right-of-way is needed for public purposes, and then the second step is to determine the terms of conveyance to adjacent property owners. This second piece does not come before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's strictly between City Council and the petitioner. Public input, so notices were sent to property owners within 200 feet of the requested area, notifying them of an August 15th Plan and Zone Commission public hearing. Notice was published in the Quad City Times, and then there was a neighborhood meeting held on August 7th at the Eastern Avenue Library. Some of the topics that were discussed were development of the multiple vehicle dealerships and buildings, site layout, traffic and access points, site lighting, landscaping and buffering adjacent homes, stormwater management, and potential development of the southern area, site of the area. So staff is recommending that case REZ 23-03 be forwarded to City Council with recommendation approval subject to the following 5 conditions. The rezoning is consistent with the Davenport 2035 land use plan. The rezoning to C3 general commercial district is compatible with the zoning district and uses of nearby developed property. As conditioned, the zoning map amendment will enable the area to be developed in a manner consistent with the surrounding area. As conditioned, for transportation improvements, the proposed rezoning will promote public health, safety, and welfare of the city. And the proposed development will not create any nonconformities with future development. So there are several conditions that we put them on separate slides so that you can see them better. The first one is that a traffic study shall be required prior to approval of any development. Any traffic measures installed as a result of the development of the subject property shall be installed at the developer's expense. Second one is a buffer yard shall be established commensurate with the depth of the established buffer yard to the west of the subject property along the north property line of the Stonegate development. Third is any non-residential use development south of the northern boundary of the Stonegate development extended. A 50-foot buffer yard shall be established as required by code. Any multi-family development shall provide buffer yards as required by code. Number 4, the buffer yard shall be landscaped with the density commensurate to the established buffer yard to the west of the subject property. If the minimum landscaping required by code is installed, a certificate of occupancy may be granted via performance bond for the remaining landscaping, which must be installed within the next growing season. 5, lighting shall be consist of LED dark sky compliant fixtures not higher than 35 feet. The level of lighting shall be reduced to a level necessary to provide security lighting only within 1/2 hour after the close of business. Oh. And PA systems of similar device or similar devices outside of buildings on the property shall not be permitted. 7 is car washes on the property shall not be located closer than 125 feet from the residential districts and operate only when the dealership is open for business. Billboards shall be prohibited. And finally, in addition to ancillary auto dealer uses granted in the C3 district by special use, only C3 uses which are allowed in the CT commercial transitional zoning district are permitted south of the northern boundary of the Stonegate development extended. Now, regarding right-of-way vacation, the findings are that the existing public right-of-way is not required for city purposes, and a utility easement would preserve the rights for utility providers to maintain existing and future infrastructure. So that it would be recommended for approval, subject to that there be a blanket utility and access easement for maintenance of such utilities. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Laura. I want to apologize to everybody for my confusion. I fully intended to explain that these two dovetail each other, similar to what we did at the public hearing and reading them at the same time. Unfortunately, I had two different commissioners assigned to one being zoning, one being subdivision, so I apologize for that confusion. Thank you, Laura, for helping straighten that out. At this time, are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Laura, this is for Laura. When we had this in our last meeting, we talked about an area for truck loading and unloading so that there would be no congestion either on Eastern or on 53rd while the semis were unloading the new cars. Where is, I didn't see that there, I guess, is my question.
So after discussion internally, because the dealership itself is a special use, that is something that's going to be specifically reviewed by the Zoning Board of Adjustment with their special use permit. So they will be required to clearly delineate their unloading and loading zone and prohibit the unloading on city streets.
The other question that I have is the residents' concern, they had some concern over compressors running in the early hours of the morning or late hours of the evening on certain trucks that are making deliveries.
Yes.
How are we going to address that?
So we looked, the petitioner did very diligently looked into that matter. The noise that the residents were hearing was the actual washing of the vehicles. There's routine washing of all the vehicles that are on display.
Okay.
But they did measure the decibel associated with that and is well under the 50 decibel level that would be managed by the city code.
So does that mean they can still wash cars during the day or wash cars in the early morning or wash cars in the late evening or?
So they would fall under the normal city code related to the noise within the city of Davenport. So there are specific hours that they would be able to, they have to keep under a certain decibel level, but they do have specific hours for that.
Okay, is that going to be one of the conditions added or is that just going to fall to somebody calling and complaining?
That's already a city code. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Laura, I do have a question for staff. I know you touched on the traffic situation, especially since that's an intersection that has no traffic lights. There's, that type of control. I know with 53rd being under construction for, over a couple of years, that no accurate traffic study has been performed. Do you have any guesstimate as to when, or does traffic engineering have any guesstimate as to when a new traffic study will be?
So the petitioner would be the one responsible for producing that traffic study. And I know for a fact that they're working on it right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before I invite the petitioner? Seeing none, would the petitioner like to step forward? Touch on
So
your
my name is
project?
John Hoffmeyer again. I'm representing the petitioner as well as we have our engineer here. We kind of gave a longer presentation last time, so we're happy to answer any questions anybody has, but we don't want to belabor you with the same stuff all over again.
Is there any new information you need to provide at this point? Are you in lockstep with what the staff's recommendations are?
Yes, we're not resisting any of the recommendations that have been made by the staff, and we did address the wheel cleaners and some other issues where somebody decided to turn off the water and kill all the trees. So those are being handled as well.
Okay.
We also already initiated the traffic study for the light, and I know that they're working with the city as we have this time.
Appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions of the petitioner? I guess we have no questions.
Thank you very much.
Would anybody in the audience like to step forward to speak either in favor of or opposition to this petition? Seeing none, final call for questions, Commission? We will now do a roll call vote on REZ 23-03 initially, and then we'll move on to the second one. Commissioner Tallman?
Eichelberry,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Manus,
Yes.
Garrington,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
and Hebner.
You bet, yes.
You bet. My motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And before we take a vote on ROW 23-04, I just want to also ask if there are any additional questions from the staff commission or the audience. Seeing none, roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Manus,
Yes.
Garrington,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Hebner,
Yes.
and Eichelberry.
Yes.
That motion also carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Commissioner Reinhardt's subdivision activity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have case F23-12, request of Orville J. and Bergstrand for a final plat of Daniel Churchill's second edition. The two-lot subdivision is at 1203 Jersey Ridge Road on .40 acres, Ward 5. Staff made recommendations, Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F23-12 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the listed conditions, and I so move.
Second.
Case F23-12 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Scott? Laura?
That's going to be me.
Okay, Laura, sorry.
No problem. All right, so the subject property is highlighted for you in yellow. It is in the Village of East Davenport at the corner of the northeast corner of Jersey Ridge and Fulton Avenue. Here's the zoning map. So the pink is the CV, which is the Village of East Davenport. It's a specific zoning district within the city, surrounded by R3C, some R4C, and then Lindsay Park is the SOS. For future land use map, the orange is the commercial node future land use. And then you have residential general. And then the green down at the bottom is parks and recreation. Here's the final plat for you to review. So it's a two-lot subdivision for the purpose of subdividing out two existing buildings. One's a commercial, one's a single-family home. So they just want to be able to sell the single-family home separately. So they have established some access easements for parking within the parking lot of the commercial property on Lot 1. There is a unique situation where there is not a lot of room in between these buildings. So when you separate them legally, it can be sold to separate entities. There's a requirement in the building codes to provide some fire rating associated with that, because now fundamentally they're not under the same ownership or control. So before, and I kind of cover this in the condition. So most of these are standard. There's a label issue for Fulton. It should be Fulton Avenue. The condition at the heart of this is that before this can go to council, the buildings need to meet the IBC and IRC exterior wall fire ratings before they can legally be subdivided. So that would be the one condition that we would focus on for today.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, any questions of staff at this point? Commissioner Schneider.
Thank you. So Laura, will that be then the house, if it's parceled off, will still be commercial?
So it would still retain the same zoning district, but it is right now a single-family home. I think the hope is to get owner-occupied, and when you have a single-family home on one commercial property, it's going to be rental. So they want to open up the opportunity to have it owner-occupied option.
So will that be, could that be a derogatory for an owner-occupied person if it's zoned commercial, remains zoned commercial?
It is allowed by right to have single family there, so I don't think it would be. But I guess that would be up to the owner.
The owner, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schneider. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I'm just curious what that would entail for the siding and,
Yep, so it is some extra level of, it's a fire rating wall. So basically, they need to fire rate the exterior on the sides. They're not going to make them do it on the east side where you also have that issue. But where you're creating a new separation issue, it would be fire rating the wall, so that's like a 1 hour. So it's to help prevent the spread of fire. So you have something that slows down the burn, and it can be done with extra drywall and things along those lines.
okay, so like a different, remove the siding, add some firewall material, new siding on
Yeah.
just one side of each building.
Kind of, the building does jog, but it's the western part of the house and the eastern part of the commercial building.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any additional questions? Would the petitioner like to step forward? Why is the petitioner not here to take questions?
I don't know, they were reminded of the meeting.
Commissioner Garrington.
Would we be in order to table this until the next meeting?
So the only thing I would caution on is there is in state code that once there is an application, we have 60 days to make a decision on it. So if there is something specific that it needs to be tabled for, that would be why you could table it, but.
Again, does any, Commissioner Manus, do you have a question?
I do have a question. Did the staff review these conditions with the owner? Is the owner in agreement with these conditions?
So I have not spoken directly with the owner. I have spoken with his representative as well as the engineer, and we have made this clear to them since May that this is a requirement that they would need to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
My feeling is that the onus is on the petitioner. If he can't be here, he can't answer our questions. If he can't answer our questions, then we should be able to table it. And regardless of whether there's a 60 days involved or not, that's not our problem. That should become his problem because he's not here.
So
It would be nice to have legal here. I'm going to tell you once again, and I will fire off another letter if if Brian doesn't have time to be down here, I need to seek legal representation here. We've got a good legal question and no representation.
understood. My response to Commissioner Reinhardt's statement is that the subdivision code itself is fine. It meets the subdivision ordinance. It is a building code statement that it needs to be met before it will go before the city council. So it meets all the parameters within the subdivision code itself. The onus is on the petitioner to carry that out before it can legally happen in the first place. But from the standpoint of the purview of the Plan Zone Commission, it as conditioned, meets the zoning, or meets the subdivision code.
Commissioner Reinhardt, are you through? Or Commissioner Hefner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the 1 hour listed assembly is going to be that whole plane between buildings.
Yes.
having spent most of my career dealing with UL listed assemblies, that is an extremely challenging thing to do on an old house like that.
Yes.
Okay, so the petitioner should know that he's going to have to remove that entire wall and put it back in place per UL.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I
We've
wanted to
we've
say.
done the best we can to explain that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. I also want to make a note that Commissioner Johnson had asked me prior to be able to be excused at 5:40 for a prior commitment, and that's the reason she just left. Any additional questions at this time? Seeing none, roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman for the REZ F23-12 as written and discussed.
Manus,
Yes.
Garrington,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Hefner,
Yes,
Eichelberry,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
No.
Johnson, Tallman, yes. Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt, for assisting. Any future business, Laura?
Yes, we will have the rezoning case REZ 23-04 before you for staff recommendation at the September 19th meeting. We will have another public hearing for another rezoning and then a final plat.
Thank you, Laura. Any communications or other business? Anybody? Seeing none?
Second.
We have a motion for adjournment. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, same sign. It is approved. We are adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.